This is the 8-9 Combo Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones.
This is the 8-9 Combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and we are into this little lull period post-Rugby Championship, mate. Before the spring tours begin, what are we going to talk about?
How's it, mate? Everyone's writing autobiographies now, and I think our mate Jeff Parks has a brilliant piece up on The Roar about fictitious titles of autobiographies, like My Life in Rugby by Jeremy Williams. But my life as a disembodied Afrikaner thespian begins this weekend. So in the lull,
Yes.
I'm using it as being my first my premiere on the boards in Ireland.
Did you have to join the academy?
I have a SAG card, but I am playing CJ Stander, and there's two performances this weekend. I'm supposed to be at them. I'm going to be at the red carpet, sir. I have to.
Are you going to Ireland this weekend?
I have to decide what to wear. Yeah.
I've got to speak to our accounts again. It's episode 35 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast, and it's time to get into the rugby week, mate, with our cheers and jeers from the weekend. You are up. Cheers me, please.
This is going to surprise everyone. I'm going to cheer something that happened at Loftus. I'm going to cheer my hated arch-rival Bulls for a different point, though. There was a beautiful move. Villaroo off his left foot, because he's left-footed. Perfect cross kick into Buta Chamberlain, who's named so interestingly. It's like he's from Loftus, but he's from Durban. Buta Chamberlain, and then he catches it, puts an inside ball to David Creel, and he streaks away for the score. And I loved it because there was no possible way that anything could be TMO'd. It was the perfect try, right, because no one touched anybody. Every ball was clearly onside and backward and just handled perfectly. The touchline was not implicated, and we could all just rejoice like the good old days when someone scored a try, instead of saying, was there a blade of grass? Could someone have rolled over?
There wasn't even a doubt on the grounding? No, nothing. Wow.
So for all the people who don't watch League, apparently there was something in League that happened.
Yeah.
That my co-host is
we don't need to talk about that. I have a jeers for you, and my jeers for you is the hype trains. I'd allowed myself to be swept up gradually by your love of Tane Edmed, which started as a complete piss take, let's remember, and then became serious. And it's been fantastic to see him producing weekly highlight reels for North Harbour in the NPC in New Zealand. So I tuned in again on Saturday, Harbour needing to win, just to win over Southland to get into the top 8, to make the 8. And the hype train derailed. The Stags led 26-0 after 20 minutes, 40-0 after 29 minutes. And Edmed's only touches to that point were to restart the game. Southland ended up winning 59-35. Edmed kicked 5 from 5.
I'm going to jeer your jeer because I don't think Tane Edmed
There's no counter jeer.
Had any influence in the game for like the first 38 minutes. All I saw was Stags in mullets, and every fan had to have a mullet, and they were all banging on the boards, and all they did was score up the gut, around the edge. It was amazing.
His only involvement for the first half an hour was to literally restart the game.
I'm still with you. I'm still with you, Tane, all the way.
Yeah, no, fair. No, the train will continue.
No
doubt. For the Wallabies, mate, the Rugby Championship has been all about continued improvement from week to week, and we will gain first-hand insight into that improvement next. When we add this guy to the stage. It's another friend of the pod returning this week, and it's another 8-9 combo debut being handed out from Harry and I, which just adds to the already impressive list of achievements in 2024 for the new record holder, the most caps for Australia, surpassing the great George Gregan through the Bledisloe Cup Series. It is a very warm welcome back to the great James Slipper. Hello, mate. Welcome back.
Hey, young boys. Hey, thanks for having me.
Very great to have you back. Congratulations on the record, mate. Sincerely, I know you love talking about it. But however you want to dice it up, however you want to look at it, it is just a phenomenal achievement that speaks to your longevity, to your perseverance, to your flexibility. Dare I say it? I mean, have you taken a little bit of time in these last week or so since the rugby championships finished, just to actually let it sink in properly?
Well, the last week's been pretty busy, to be fair. Straight back into fatherhood. Got a 6-week-old daughter and a 16-month-old daughter. So, it's been busy, but I've had time to reflect on what's happened. It was a special moment. It was something I didn't strive, head out, strive to, I guess, reach when I started my career. I just wanted to play some rugby and try and make the team, to be fair. So I think what I'm most proud about is just being able to consistently be up there, in the 23 each year. So I guess I'm hanging around like a bad smell, aren't
I? Hang around like a well matured smell is what it is. The fatherhood, get straight back into fatherhood is interesting, isn't it? Because 16 months olds and 6 weeks old aren't going to give you much respect, aren't they? You can't just sort of stand there and go, I'm the most capped wallaby here, girls. Come on. You get nothing.
Nah, mate, absolutely nothing. After my first daughter was born, I flew out the day of, like the day of the birth, to play for the Brumbies, and then I flew out 2 days later after the second one to Argentina. So, to be fair, like I've always, family comes first, but the Wallabies have come pretty quickly behind that. So I've got a lot of thanking to do to my wife and for getting around it.
Will you have a bit of a celebration with friends and family in the coming weeks?
I'm not too sure, really. Nothing's been spoken about it. I know a few of the old players that I've played with in the past are trying to set up a little dinner. But to be fair, everyone's pretty busy at this time of the year. So everyone's kind of looking for that next thing to do. And I'm sure at the end of the year, mate, we'll get around it and celebrate it.
Have you had a chance to have a look at the list and see Jay Slipper at the top of it? Is that the point it sinks in?
Mate, I saw a couple of lists go up through Instagram and social media and stuff. Well, I'm only on Instagram, so I saw a couple of things that I was tagged in, and it's pretty surreal. Like, you see some of the players on that list, like Griggs, for example. Like, he's a player I grew up watching and idolising. Not so much for his halfback play, but just the way he had the game. And how he competed and everything. And then, there's plenty of others. There's Stephen Moore, there's Hoops, there's Adam Ashley Cooper, and Sharpie's up there as well. So there's a lot of players I've been able to play with as well, which has been special.
Yeah. It's been a phenomenal achievement, Harry, and it's probably been another year of consistency for Slips, you'd have to say.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the people who topped the cap counts, and Gregan maybe notwithstanding. There's a lot of players who were not known for, the extreme athleticism. It's more like a list of players who would all say the same thing. Like, I didn't really think I would play this many caps, and here I am. I was looking up some facts and figures on you, Slips, and I saw that on Wikipedia. There's an entry about you, and there's an article. It says that you have wisdom and depth, but then it says citation needed. So someone has written that in. Was that you? Did you write that in on yourself?
That was. I could do with a bit more wisdom, but no, that was not me. I don't know who's running that sort of page. Was that Wikipedia?
Yeah, Wikipedia. You can go on there. It's actually some very funny things on there.
Always reliable.
I can only imagine.
I think one of your mates has stitched you up. But it's funny because the kind of serious part of it is to do 140 caps, you had to go through such highs and lows. And you would have had to have come back from things. And that's the common element that I saw on the list of people who had 100 plus caps, is every one of them had, maybe there was a selection problem or they had a dip in form, but they came back. How did you do that? And what was your comeback philosophy? How did you always get yourself off the mat and come back?
It's a really good question because I think I've gone through 6 Wallaby coaches. My first one was Robbie Deans back in 2010. I guess every coach has a different way of playing the game, especially here in Australia. So I guess to be able to evolve your game into a player's game plan, your strengths, you got to keep evolving with the new coach every time he comes in. Yeah, I think that's been a strength of mine, is working out what I need to do, or how I can contribute to that coach's sort of philosophy on how to play the game. And I've never been a player who's gone out there to just score tries, or no one's relying on me to score tries or any of that flashy stuff. But
they should, mate. It's a highlight reel every time.
I don't think so, mate. But yeah, I think you just always go back to your core fundamentals of the game. So your tackling, your passing, your line running, your set piece, like all that stuff that no matter what coach is in charge, rugby's always needed for the fundamentals, and it's a simple game. We just make it pretty tough sometimes.
But from 2010 to 2024, scrums have changed. How have you learned to scrum differently? What have you had to take up and pick up to keep up with the game?
Well, I think the scrums have gotten they're probably easier now for your age. Like the older you get, they're probably not as taxing on the body. There's probably more weight going through the scrum now post engagement. But if you think back to those, or when I first started, we had the big engagement,
the hit,
the big hit.
Yeah. So I did a couple of years of that, and the 30-year-old props back then were struggling. So we used to do scrum sessions where Alec Evans back at the Reds, this is going back a few years, but we'd have to hit the scrum machine around the whole rugby field. So up the sideline, the whole way around. Yeah, and now now it's pretty rare to actually even hit a scrum machine. So so the evolution of the scrums changed so much, but technically you got to be really strong now, and you got to know how to scrum. And then and what I've seen is just the size of the players now just getting so big and so powerful. So that's probably the biggest difference.
Has there been an evolution for you each? Sorry, mate. Has there been an evolution for you each year, or from Super Rugby to Test Rugby, even each year? I had a coffee with Dan Palmer, who you'd know very well, a couple of years ago now, and I just asked him when did you stop learning about scrums? And he said, I haven't.
Yeah,
even as a coach.
Yeah, it keeps changing. I'll tell you about the fundamentals are still there. Your strength, you got to be strong in a low position, all that stuff. Tick tick tick, no matter what sort of era you're playing in. But just I guess the scrum tactics itself change each year. But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, you want force going straight north, and that's the primary objective in a scrum. So you'll always be learning. Props are always trying to outdo each other, so there's always going to be new trends in the scrum. But yeah, I guess the core fundamentals never change.
Going up against the Tightheads for 14 years of Test Rugby, what style or body shape did you find was actually the most challenging for a Tighthead against you, and what shapes did you think was a little bit easier?
I always found the short ones, the short, stocky ones. I think back to the first time I played against France, I was up against Nicholas Marsh.
Oh, yeah.
And I got taught a lesson that day.
He had no neck. There was no neck.
Yeah. And he had Savat next to him, and then I think it was Domingo was at Loosehead. And it was a tough on night for me that night, but we ended up winning by 30 odd points, so it ended up all right. But I find the bigger bodies, I find it. I don't want to say easier because it's still bloody hard, but you look at Big Antonio from France now, the tight end. He's got to be pushing 150 kilos. So I find it a little bit easier, but there's still a lot of weight coming down on you. So
That's what
I guess there's
Inche
pros and
says.
cons
Yeah.
to both.
Ox Inche says that a big body, he finds different targets and he can find the most uncomfortable part for the tight end. And it's when it's more compact, it's hard for him.
Yeah, it's, you got to sight your target. And then if there's a big target, it makes it a little bit easier. But if you get it wrong against a big bloke, you'll find it out. So that's a trade-off.
Talk to us about the front row brotherhood, mate. Obviously, we see post match. You're always very respectful. There's always a handshake and a hug and all that. But is there conversation over a beer afterwards? I thought you had me here. I was trying to do this to you there. Like, are you actually exchanging notes with your opposites?
Yeah. Depending on like the circumstance of the game. Like if there's another game the week after, you probably won't talk too much.
Totally.
And obviously if you go well, you're happy to chat as well. But yeah, like what I've found over the years is the props always get together and have a beer after the game. We tend to go into the sheds after the crowd goes home and we just have a beer and rarely do you talk scrum. It's more just catching up. Just respectful stuff. Really, you kind of leave most of the footy on the field and just at the end of the day, we're just blokes who play rugby and we find a lot of common things between us.
Yeah. How scientific is your research going into a game? How much are you studying engagement angles, height differences, all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, fair bit. We spend, like at the Wallabies with Mike Cron now, we spend probably the majority of our time on us. We kind of want to make sure that our scrum's where it wants to be, and not just the starters, the bench boys as well, just across the platform. And it's not just the front row; it's a big emphasis on the back five. But yeah, throughout the week, we'll look at, I guess, the opposition scrum and what they're trying to do, and what their objective, if they're scrumming a certain way or they're trying to scrum for penalties in a certain part of the field, or that sort of stuff. You kind of you review or you preview before each game, and that hasn't really changed for most of my career. So I think the best way to go about it is to make sure your scrum's where it needs to be, and then work out what they're trying to do to you.
I might be wrong, but look back at this year so far, at least Australia's had a pretty good scrum against Argentina, against New Zealand. I thought they had an ascendancy. Even going back to the World Cup, I felt like the set piece didn't actually do the Wallabies wrong. It was defense. It was letting in tries, too many of them, sometimes in spurts, that really got you. And looking from the outside, it felt like either there's a new system bedding in, or people were not knowing where each other were back in the back line. And I know obviously you have to man a spot in defense that's closer to the ruck, but what's your reflections on that? How can the Wallabies get a bit tighter and harder to score on in the end of your tour?
Well, I think it starts at the collision itself. So you get your tackle right. You don't allow the teams to get really quick ball over the advantage line. It's like a cycle. So then your defense line can set earlier. Then you can get off the line. You can put them under pressure. When you don't do that, that's the flip side. You can't set early. You can't get off the line. They get another good carry on you. So for me, it starts at the collision. So you want a nice low chop and a guy over the top. So you win the collision, and then it allows time in the tackle, and it gives your mates a time to set a D line. Really, for us, we've had a few different defensive coaches over the years in these past few years. So we've had a number of systems, but now obviously Laurie's in there now, and he's going to work. So for me, it starts at the collision. But the ruck defense, I know I'm a prop, but the guys out wide can't defend well unless we do our job in the middle, and that's how it works.
And that's the flow on, isn't it? It's the
yeah.
You mentioned different systems. You mentioned 6 Wallabies coaches earlier. How does Joe Schmidt's methods compare to to what you've had over the years. I love there was an interview. I think it might have been Ian Payton in the Sydney Morning Herald did a great little profile with Robbie Deans leading up to your equaling Greaves, I think it was, and his line was just simply, "Yeah, we threw him in pretty early." So Robbie was fairly keen to sort of back young guys, but how does Joe Schmidt compare and contrast to the other five?
Oh, well, they're all different in their own way. Like we're talking about some big coaches. We got Check, Eddie Jones, Robbie Deans, Ewan McKenzie. Yeah, and now Joe.
Dave
so
Rennie.
they've all been and Renz, and so they've all been different in their own way. And the biggest thing that Joe is trying to embed in us is just the real basics of the game. It's probably where we've lacked. In the past few years, we're probably a little bit loose with the ball, with our discipline. We've seen some really good improvements there this year with our retention of the ball at the breakdown, but also our discipline as well. So, I guess the theory that Joe's going, he obviously has come in for his first year. He's probably finding, he's getting to know the players and staff himself. So he's seeing how we go throughout the year. But his non-negotiables are the fundamentals of the game, and that's pretty much what he's been working hard on. He's kind of just stripped it back. So all the other coaches were slightly different. They just went for the cutthroat approach, most of them. But yeah, it's more of a work in progress with Joe.
Is it similar to Dave Rennie's first 4 or 6 months in charge? He did a similar sort of thing, tried to strip things back and rebuild in certain areas?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of you can put Joe and Renz kind of in the same boat. Like they see rugby as a game that's it's simple. Like you want to retain the ball, you want to get forward, and you want to score points, and not make sure you don't go backwards through bad discipline and stuff. So there's a lot of similarities between the two coaches, and it was mainly based off skill. So, and it's not just the flashy skill that you see, it's the skill that if it's a 2-on-1, you just want to hit the 2-on-1, just do the obvious. So just the little things like that, which I see a lot of similarities between the two.
It does seem similar in some ways, but it feels like this season you are hitting the rucks better on the clean, and it seems to be able to go deeper into the phase count. And I was thinking about that, and I went back and watched one of the games under Rennie, one of the good ones where you took Ireland close, and there was just a lot of penalties. And I realized that one of the big differences this season looks like you're not getting pinged as much. Is that a particular focus for Joe? Like I know when he was running Ireland, he hated that. He kind of tried to eradicate the unnecessary penalty, especially when it's on your ball. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's a big focus for all teams. You can see, like, you play South Africa, you can quickly go 3-6-9 off bad discipline really quickly, and then before you know it, you're 9 points behind. So there's been an emphasis on, discipline gets thrown out there a lot, but it's a lot of things come under discipline, like whether it's being lazy not to get in the line quick enough, or it's not just the penalties itself, it's what's causing the penalties. Renz used to have a thing, he used to call it DAPs, so dumbass penalties, which are just penalties like like head highs, or
body heights,
foul play, stuff like that. Yeah, so dumbass stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. You watch. To me, you're playing at a better body height now, and that's sort of a corporate thing. Like the entire group is seeming to come into contact areas, at hip area instead of another Rennie area. It seemed like there was way too many shoulder height contacts, which is just going to get you in trouble at some point. Sooner or later, someone's going to dip, and you're going to hit the head, and you're off. You look at the teams that are doing well now; they're not getting carded as much. And Argentina had one of their best tournaments until the final round, because they just never got carded. That shows you that if Argentina can stop getting carded, I mean, anybody can, right?
Well, it definitely helps. We had like the last couple of years, like we were probably one of the worst in terms of cards. And it, like playing with a man down, sometimes 2 men down, just like it just makes winning the game so much harder. And the amount of work you got to do to cover up 1 man down really strains your system. So it's pivotal that you keep 15 on the field. That's for sure.
Do you just tell Tom Wright, play for 2 men? And he goes, yeah, I'm ready.
Whatever works. Talk to us about Joe's gradual improvement methods. Is it a matter of, right, this week, guys, we're working on this, or is he trying to really strip back the different aspects of the game and add something each week, or how's he sort of approaching the gradual improvement?
He's probably like he came in from day one and just outlined exactly what he wanted in terms of, I know I've said this a lot, but the fundamentals. So, you carry clean. Like that's where it starts. This is an attack, obviously, but that's where it starts. And that's what we're going to draw the line on for us as a Wallaby group, around our ability to carry well, but also recycle that ball and get it going again. Like we haven't been perfect at it. We've been great in patches throughout most games, but it's all about Joe's been pushing from each game. It's about stacking those moments, further and further into the game. Like when we're playing well and when we're recycling the ball and carrying well, we're putting teams under a lot of pressure. It's just every now and then you get a ball breaker and you miss a clean, or you're a bit late to the clean out, and the teams are so good now on the ball that you lose that ball. And with the amount of strike players out there in world rugby now, it's they fling it out wide and off they go, and they're playing down your end again. So it's about stacking those moments up and making sure that you don't have one lapse in concentration from all 15 players on the field at once.
So the second half of the first Bledisloe and the first half of the second Bledisloe, if you put those two together, was a hell of a game. Is that the shape, looking back on those 2 periods, purple patches, is that the shape that you're kind of moving towards? A lot of attack, coordinated, side to side, but also some really strong
with
carries up
space.
the middle, like LSL and just really bashing at the middle.
Yeah, I think like we want to play a game that's got variation in our game as well. So we want to have forwards who can play numerous passes, whether just I guess to keep the defense guessing, because defenses are really good now, getting really high into your line. And if you don't run good lines, or the pass is a bit off, you'll get cleaned up. So for us, those 2 halves that you're talking about, that's when we were doing it really well. We're putting them under pressure instead of putting ourselves under pressure. And what we saw was we were able to score points off the back of that in both those halves. Not all games go your way though. Like there's always going to be swings in momentum, and the All Blacks in that first game came out and put 20 on us before 15 minutes. So I remember sitting on the bench going, it's going to be a tough one. But like it was I guess a show of character that we dug in there and clawed our way back out of it, because it was looking pretty ominous there for a bit, but we finished the game, and to be fair, we were full of confidence going into that last minute of the game. It's just a shame we missed out.
So that was the 140 cap, right? That game. Well, do you remember going back in time to your first one? I looked it up, and it was 2010 versus England in Perth. And I looked at the front row was Daly, Fainga, and Mafu, and then you came on for Daly, and then Mafu was sin-binned by Nigel Owens almost immediately. So do you remember what happened next?
I had to go tight end.
Nice.
That's what happened next.
On debut.
On debut, it was a 5 meter. It was on my 5 meters. So like we're under the pump, and I've said this before. Like our scrum wasn't going well that night, and I'm on the bench for a reason. Like it's the starters are the starters back then anyway. Like they were the better players. So I remember getting put on, at Loosehead, 1 scrum, 2 scrums, Celestia gets sent off. I have to go to tight end because there was only 1 prop on the bench back then. And
of course. Yeah.
So we had to pack another, I don't know, 3 or 4 scrums, and then they ended up getting a penalty try.
And you what, 21 years old?
Welcome to Test rugby.
Yeah, and 15 years later, Robbie Deans describes it as, we threw him in the deep end.
Yeah, mate, I was felt like I was sinking there for a bit.
The games like that, you think you're coming out of it shorter.
Yeah, it was a surreal moment because I was so nervous. Like it was, like these nerves I've never felt before. But in saying that, I was so young that I was just naive as well. So I was like once I get out there, I'll be all right. We ended up winning the game, so it ended up being a really good night for me, and it's still one of my favourite games. I know I probably got pumped a bit, but we won the game for Australia over England, and on debut, you couldn't ask for much more than that.
No, certainly. Is your first scrum always the sign of, all right, now I'm into the game? Is that's the moment where you realise, righto, we're on?
Oh, well, probably like that for that game it was, because I got subbed on into a scrum. So it was like getting punched on the nose, mate. Like I had no time to think about it. I was straight into it. But yeah, I only had I had 3 super games under my belt at the time, and 2 of them were like 10 minutes off the bench. So I had one proper game of Super Rugby. So I didn't really know what I was up for. I didn't know that Test Rugby was another couple of steps up, really.
Yeah.
When you first came into Test Rugby, what weight did you play at, and have you kept pretty much the same weight to your career? Do you have a sort of fighting weight that you have to get to?
Well, I try and play it. I sit around 116, so I'm definitely on the lighter side of most props, especially this day and age. But when I first started, I was obviously a bit younger and a bit stronger in the gym. I was probably 118, 119. But yeah, the props weren't so big back then. What I've noticed in the last 5 years, they've shot up. So, that's probably a reason for. There's many reasons for that, but it's more of a power game now. So some big props out there.
It's funny because in the gym though, people do different things now. Props. I mean, there's some core things like squats and deadlifts and stuff people always do, but they do more functional gym nowadays. And some teams really believe in just grappling almost and doing live practice. There's no substitute for a body versus a body and a shifting. What do you think, and how have you kept part of your career is that you haven't been injured, debilitatingly, and you keep going. So what have you done to keep yourself healthy for all these years?
Well, talking about not being injured, mate, I've had a fair few injuries. I've snapped an Achilles, shoulder recon, ankle recon. Like I've had a fair whack of them. But the biggest thing I've learned in my career is flexibility is probably the most valuable thing in order to keep you on the field. I know it sounds a bit boring, but when I was young, I'd never stretch.
That's interesting.
I'd never mobilise the rig. But I'd stretch every night now. Like otherwise, I probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed. But that's probably the biggest thing I've learned. In order to play as long as I have, I feel like the recovery side of it, post training, post games, is that's non-negotiable. But flexibility is the biggest one for me.
Do you hear this, Brett? Because Brett's always playing cricket against politicians, and swinging hamstrings and popping Achilles. You got to stretch, man.
Yeah.
Is that a pace bowler or what?
Nah, God no, mate. That's a mugs game. Nah. We can compare hamstring injuries one day, mate. Talk to us then about the rugby championship, the reflections of how did you guys score yourselves after this second part of the international season, I suppose it is.
Yeah, look, it was. I'd say it was like we didn't get the results we wanted. We didn't score ourselves, but we obviously kicked off the tournament against the world champs in South Africa, and they're a bloody good team. They're very experienced, and they put us under a lot of pressure in both those games, and I think going to Argentina and winning away from home was a real pump in the arm for us. So, it was just probably one disappointing game out of all of them was that second Argentinian game where we just fell off in that second half and really deflated our tyres a bit. So for us, like for me individually, I can see a lot of improvement in our game coming all the way back from July series against Wales and Georgia. We've grown as a team. I think we've had 16 debutants this year, or close to. There's been a lot of movement in the team as well. We've got new coaches. So we are, I hate saying this word, but we are building in a way that, I see that's positive. But at the end of the day, like no coach will come in and get a quick fix. It comes back to that base, and that's what we're working on. So what we saw against the All Blacks was when we strung some stuff together, we can put a really good team under pressure, and we just weren't able to go probably longer than 40 minutes against them, and found out at the end that it wasn't good enough. So I'm sure the team will keep building throughout the year, and then we've got to hit our straps next year.
Yeah, no doubt.
Has Joe sat you down and kind of, I don't know, looked forward, not just getting through this rugby championship, but has he kind of laid out a plan from here to the Lions of what he wants to see and where he wants to go? Or has he kept things kind of close to the vest?
Very close to the chest. Joe's come in not knowing any of the players and pretty much most of the staff too. So, the physios, the doctor, and then there's a heap of players that he really wouldn't have known on a personal note. So he's kept his cards, close to his chest, and that's probably for a good reason because he's still trying to work out everyone and, I guess build those relationships with the players and staff and see how players respond to his type of coaching and his game plan. I'm sure he'd know what he's doing. Going into the Lions. But as a player, we've just got a real simple role that we just need to perform on the weekend, but that comes off our prep throughout the week of training.
He seems very tight, tightly wound, put together. I watched him in the warm-ups, the Bledisloe one. He was holding 2 rugby balls for some reason and walking around and just studying everything. Kind of
Measured.
different from Eddie Jones, kind of wild man, and Dave Rennie with the guitar, ukulele, whatever. I mean, does Joe ever kind of just get crazy? Does he let his hair down? Does he get on the table and dance?
I wouldn't. He doesn't get on the table and dance. He doesn't.
I'm not picturing that.
He doesn't sing any songs either. But he's quite a funny bloke. He's really personable as well. So. Once he builds those relationships with the players, he's a great man. He's a great coach. The players absolutely love him. So, he'll only grow into that. And as we get to know each other a bit more, and once he's seen a lot of players come through the doors this year already. So, he'll just grow.
What do you think makes a good coach? I mean, some really good coaches going on right now. Rassie Erasmus, Andy Farrell come to mind as 2 very different guys, but they're really good at getting the best out of their players, and they seem to play better at country than at club. Just looking back on your 6 coaches, what do you think what's the composite for a good coach, great coach?
Oh, some of the best coaches I've had were they were nearly like man managers. They really got the best out of you from intrinsically, like from inside. So not so much motivators, but they were really good at managing people. And then they really let the assistants just take over for their individual roles, but they had a really good way of molding it all together back to the center point. I've had so many different coaches and they've all had really good strengths. But that's probably the one coach I found that's worked for me the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Has it been tough, like getting used to a new coach? As you say, you've had so many coaches over your time. You would have had several at the Reds. You come down to Canberra. The Brumbies play differently to the Reds. Stephen Larkham's playing the Brumbies differently to Dan McKellar, and then you get into an international system, and it's a different setup this year to what it was last year, which was different again to the couple of years before that. So, do you feel like you're just continually adjusting the way you play, or the way you need to play to impress someone?
Oh, kind of. Like most of the game plans these days aren't too dissimilar. Like it always comes down to a really good set piece, looking after your ball and then putting them under pressure in defence. So I guess you got to, going back to the point I made at the very start, you got to keep evolving. But you always got to have your core strengths like locked away, and that's you know for a prop, they're pretty simple, things you need to get right. And, your set piece, your scrum, your maul, your line out, and then your defence and attack will come off the back of that. But I tend to enjoy new coaches when they come in because they just have new ideas. It freshens it up. They bring different players in and different coaches come in with different ideas. So rugby always changes. Like the trends in the game always change. Like you look back at some of the games in the 90s and the 2000s, like they're completely different games to what you see now. So, and that will probably continue for the rest of the game history. So, or future.
Harry, you dug out some old scrums from the 80s only in the last week or so, didn't you?
Yeah, it was actually 1976, New Zealand versus South Africa, and it was so funny because they would form a scrum, and even though it would collapse 3 or 4 times, so people nowadays saying there's too many restarts, there was always, but they stayed bound and then just stood up sort of miraculously as a single organism, and then just keep battling. The scrums were so long because they just never.
It's like some of those scrums where they bound up and just ran at each other.
Yeah,
like from 10 meters away.
Yeah. They're so eager, they were so enthusiastic to scrum. They were just like forming at high speed and smashing into each other for some reason.
And forming from height too. They're like basically standing up, and there's just bang.
I tell you what, I wouldn't have played 140 games doing that.
I was thinking part of the longevity is, I don't know how many rucks you hit in Test rugby, even 5,000 rucks, is knowing the best way to go from ruck to ruck, not taking the long road, but shortcuts. And so I like to watch the clever players. Like Fraser McRight's good at this. He's really good at predicting where the next ruck will be. I was thinking, save yourself a lot of mileage if you just know where to run instead of running
corners
around. Yeah.
It's like in any position though. Like you always want to go the straight line, not the curved line.
Yeah. Has it been fun watching him come along? Fraser McRight, he just seems to have a sixth sense now for the ball.
Yeah, he's a great player. He's a great man. I was I saw him come through at the Reds before I left. So he's definitely a player that's got a big future in front of him. But he's already done so much in rugby already in Australia. So he's been a really important player for us at the Wallabies. And him and Wilso are like two French wingers. They love each other, so they're like two really good men that the Wallabies really need.
They're telekinetically attached. They always know which other are. It's really funny.
They do.
Yeah.
Talk to us about Angus Bell's really exciting, but Isaac Kalir's come from nowhere this year. Is it energizing for you as a more experienced prop to see a couple of really promising young loose heads come through?
Yeah, it actually is. Obviously, Belly's been around for a few years now. He's probably not that young guy that everyone thinks he is. He's 24 now. He's got 30 odd games under his belt. So he's
50-year-old feet.
Yeah. Don't tell him that. Mate, I think his back's worse though. His back's a bit backy. But he's a really good player. He's been outstanding for us. The way he goes about his business in carrying the ball and that sort of presence on the field, it's been really good for us. And likewise, Isaac's been outstanding. Once for such a young player who hasn't really played too much in recent years to come on the scene for the Rebels this year and then taking his opportunity at the Wallabies has been outstanding to watch. He's always asking for advice. He always asks. He's searching to learn more. It's really cool to see.
Yeah. At which point do you sit him down and start flipping through your try assist reel and say, this is how you really play loose head.
The inside ball.
Everyone knows about the inside ball, don't they? Mate, I think I did one against the Rebels, so he probably remembers that, old Isaac. But
You might do.
You got to start
Mate,
dummy. You got to dummy, man. You got to dummy the inside ball and go out.
oh, mate, I'd get hooked straight away, I reckon. Mate, to be fair, those two young props, mate, they got more nous than I do.
Yeah. The spring tour it's a big one. England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. I mean, they're pretty crucial, aren't they, in terms of last tests before a Lions series? You get a proper look at them.
Yeah, and it's the beauty of rugby. You get to go and travel the world and test yourselves against some of the teams in rugby. So, the tour is going to be really important for us as a group, as a team, to see if we can keep building, keep stacking moments, and we're always striving for that perfect performance. And it'd be nice to really put some of these teams under a lot of pressure in their home backyard. But it's exciting for us. We can't wait to get over there.
It's also cool because the whole world, like when you're playing England and Twickenham, the whole world is supporting you. Like at that moment in time, everyone's Australia.
I hope so.
No, even Ireland and Scotland are going, go Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you started thinking about the prospect of a second Lions series? I know when you re-signed your last contract and the idea of a second Lions series was asked then, and you very quickly said, well, hang on a minute, I've actually got to get that far first of all. But you're not too far away suddenly.
Well, I'm signed to the Lions. So I'll be available. I'm not trying to swerve the question, but I'll be ready to go. It's just whether I'm selected firstly. And probably those two props that we mentioned earlier, like if they keep growing, then they probably won't need me. So we'll see what happens. But I'll always be throwing the hand up if needed.
Yeah, but you're a swing prop, like you from the first test, and swing props are super valuable. You can go
True.
True.
Although I don't see a lot of
squad prop.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of volunteering to switch to tight head anymore, though, mate.
Well, mate, I think I'm too light, to be honest. I've been trying to get belly over there, just to up a bit. But it's like tight end. That's a whole new ball game. It's a really tough position to play. And it's the most important on the field. It's look. I've always put my hand up to do it if I needed to, but it's not something I jump at like exciting.
No, just don't ever stand in the same picture with Taniela Tupou.
I know, mate, that'd make me look so bad.
It makes you look fit, that's for sure.
Yeah, who's that runner?
I don't even think that would make me look fit. I've got one of those old school prop bodies.
That's the secret of success, man.
Yeah, exactly, mate. It's been great to catch up again. We thank you for giving up a bit of time amidst some family time. Hopefully, you are actually finding a bit of downtime between catching up with old mates and changing nappies and all that important sort of stuff at home as well.
Yeah, I'm doing my best. But I'm trying to catch up with the family as much as I can before potentially heading overseas. So. Trying to squeeze it all in, but we'll see how we go.
Yeah, how long was the list when you got home? How long was the list of jobs?
Oh, it was never ending, really.
Exactly. Good on you, mate. Good to talk to you. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers. Explosive logo.
This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones. And mate, how good was that to get that direct Wallabies insight from James Slipper a week and a bit after the Rugby Championship wrapped up?
Always fun to talk to Slips, and I just kind of looked at all the high cap guys, and there were some intense people like Victor Matfield that was always kind of on his game face, but I thought a lot of them were actually pretty genial, happy-go-lucky guys, and I think maybe there's a bit of a certain emotional fitness that you have to have to get to 100, 120, 130. You cannot get too down or too up. And Slips always seems like that guy who's, I'm sure he learned it. It wasn't like innate, and he went through some stuff, but he learned a way to kind of balance. He seems like a well-balanced guy.
I wonder, what did Victor Matfield play? 127 tests?
He just got
even just gone past him, hasn't he?
So 127, yeah.
I wonder if there is a certain number of tests, like a benchmark that you reach, and suddenly you get an email from Victor Matfield or George Green or whatever.
The club.
Welcome to the club, mate. We can chat now.
We have your green Masters jacket, and we have a dinner every year.
Yes. Yeah. It just says threshold met. I genuinely hope that's the way.
They should. They should have a dinner together somewhere. And
can you imagine that WhatsApp group?
Only Centurions are allowed to be there. I'm sorry, Willie, you're 97 caps.
Imagine a WhatsApp group of the leading, the most capped players from each country. Can you imagine that?
It's got to be the grudging respect you have, even for someone that you kind of didn't like, but only they would understand what it means. That kind of camaraderie, brotherhood that comes from really going through something similar.
Yeah,
it's got to be there.
So much.
Yeah,
exactly right. Let's whip around the grounds, mate, from the weekend. Round 3 of the Irk, and
beautiful round, beautiful, magical round. The Irk is real. Curry Cup was not played this year, but the Irk is on.
Yes, and to people just tuning in, wondering what on earth Harry is going past. The Stormers had a win on the weekend.
The Harry Index is back.
Stormers had a good win, beat Zebre 36-5 in Parma, which after Zebre beat Munster, I assume you are now proclaiming that the Stormers are better than Munster?
All I'll say is,
that works?
Normally when you see a big score of a Zebra, you go, okay, whatever. But they did beat Munster, so it's proper opposition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was one of those weird games where it didn't look like it was that big a score, but it just kind of accumulated.
And suddenly it was. Yeah.
And actually it happened across a lot of those games where there were some really big scores, but it didn't look like a blowout. And then it was.
Yeah. Yes, I caught highlights. It was Cardiff played Glasgow. Yes, same thing. It was about an 85-point game. It was like,
right. And the Lions were back to their, I remember Super Rugby when the Lions were just scoring because they would run the ball back from, their own try line. That's
from
what
behind their own
again.
try line. Yeah.
They were just running everything back. The great Paul Williams said they would run it back from the car lot. They just didn't have any red light. It was all green.
55-21. They had a big win over Edinburgh. Munster, of course, bounced back as well from that Zebra defeat, beating Ospreys 23-0. So I'm glad to see that you are now back on board with the Irk this year. The Premiership
back on board with tries that don't need TMOs. I just love it when you go, okay, there's no need. Shut up, TMO. Go back. We don't need to talk here. Yeah.
We don't need to talk here. It was round 3 of the Premiership in England as well. Northampton escaped 33-29 thriller with Harlequins. That was a really good game.
Interesting game. I liked it.
Really interesting game. Bristol beat Bath 36-26 at the Rec, and Leicester had a big win over Newcastle as well. 40.
Who needs a coach? Don't need no stinking coach. We'll just play without a coach and win.
Yeah, I wonder how that review goes on Monday morning at Leicester HQ, and Checker tries to say, "Well, this is what we did." Well, how do you know you weren't there?
I think it's always the first game in a ban or something, or when the coach is replaced. You always play really well. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's going to be the next week. That's always tough. Yeah.
The first album with a new guitar or something like that, isn't it? Yeah. Are we still boycotting France?
I'm going to let them slowly back in. I'm going to take notice of what's happening there because, the players. We shouldn't punish the players for the misdeeds of.
What can I tell you over the weekend? Cast beat Toulouse 28-23, which is
a shocker. That will affect the Harry Index because Toulouse, was number 1 at the end of last year, just ahead of the Blues. The Blues.
There you go.
Maybe the Blues are now dormant, risen to number one. Who knows? Harry
Without
Index
playing.
knows
That's
all. Yeah.
look, the Harry Index works in funny ways. It was the final round of the NPC in New Zealand as well. Tasman dropped to third after the Ranfurly Shield defeat to Taranaki in Nelson on Sunday. It was a really, really good game. In the end, Wellington finished first with a win over Hawke's Bay. Quarterfinals are on next weekend. We'll touch base with them in games of the week later in the week. So make sure you are all subscribed and following as needed and wherever you need to do that. Any big headlines the last 7 days that floated your way?
Oh, I think the French came out against the 20-minute red card. That's the only thing I got.
They
from the
did.
rugby world.
They said they had lots of ideas about improving the game, but the 20-minute red card was one of them. Was not one of them.
Right.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah,
That's all.
Yeah, sure, fine, whatever. The Western Force went down to emerging Ireland in their South African series. They'd beaten the Cheetahs Wednesday last week, and then went down by 5 to the Force, and then they take on a Western Province 15 in Stellenbosch this weekend, which will be a game I presume that may or may not happen in your eyes.
We're gonna make them do the opposite of emerge, whatever that word is. We're gonna disemerge them.
Demerge?
I don't know.
No, that's something different again. Yeah, no, it's not. That's definitely not that. A final thought for the week?
Oh man, I'm just looking forward to the end of year tour. I'm actually sat down and ran the ruler over who has to do what, and I've decided that your Wallabies need to win 2. Got to win 2.
Yeah, I think they need to win at least 2. And look,
2 is the
probably
minimum. That's
probably
the base.
can. Yeah, they probably can win at least 2. I think.
So let's do a hashtag somewhere around that. Winning 2, got to win 2.
Yeah, that's the base. That's the base. Episode 35 then for the 8-9 combo is done. Go and check the show notes for the links to the 8-9 combo on Twitter and on YouTube, with video versions now on YouTube Music as well. We've got that sorted out in the background. So leave us a rating or review wherever you can as well. And whichever pod platform you're on and you're following us, make sure you've jumped into your settings and turned auto download onto on. Then you won't miss anything at all. Harry and I remain on the socials in our usual places at haribaldijones and at bmcsport. You'll find links on our socials and in the show notes as well for Harry's written stuff on The Roar a couple of times a month, and my weekly Australian columns on RugbyPass as well. This is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast Double Act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones. And we'll be back in your ears in just a few days with another edition of Games of the Week.
Come play with us.
This is the 8-9 Combo Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones.